Go.
Okay. Good evening and welcome everyone to our issues forum with the Pullman League of Women Voters and the Pullman Chamber of Commerce concerning ballot issues for the November 2020 general election. The League is honored to co-sponsor these forums with the Pullman Chamber of Commerce, who's an excellent partner on so many projects in our community. I'm Bobby Ryder. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Pullman and proud to be here representing both organizations tonight. First, I'd like to read the League's mission and responsibilities. The League of Women Voters of Pullman provides nonpartisan election information on candidates and issues. The Pullman League never endorses, supports, or opposes any candidate or political party. The League of Women Voters of Pullman adopts position statements based on study and member agreement. Once the League adopts a position, it can then be used to shape public policy. And if you wish to see the complete list of positions for the League of Women Voters of Pullman, you can check our website, lwvpullman.org. So the League will I want to remind people that the League will sponsor candidate forums later this week. There will be a candidates forum with the county commissioner candidates on Thursday, October 15th from 7 to 8 p.m. and that will be over Zoom. And a candidates forum with candidates for District 9 representatives is set for 4 to 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 17th, also over Zoom. And you can check our League, Pullman League of Women Voters website for the link to these forums, and that's lwvpullman.org. We will begin our forum tonight discussing engrossed Senate Joint Resolution number 8212. The legislature has proposed a constitutional amendment on investment of public funds. This amendment would allow public money held in a fund for long-term care services and supports to be invested by governments as authorized by state law, including investments in private stocks. The Pullman League of Women Voters is pleased that individuals representing each side of engrossed Senate Joint Resolution number 8212 are participating this evening. Kathleen McCall is the advocacy director for AARP Washington State, and she is supporting the resolution. And we have Senator Bob Hasegawa from the 11th Legislative District, who will talk about his opposition to the joint resolution. I would like to read a little bit about who these people are and their qualifications. Ms. McCall is the Advocacy Director for AARP Washington State, where she manages government relations and legislative affairs to support policies serving the 50+ population. She has worked for some of the leading nonprofit organizations, including World Vision and YWCA, addressing global and domestic public health, poverty, and economic justice issues. She also worked for Microsoft to advance information access and digital inclusion to underserved and underrepresented communities. She is the proud parent of a recent WSU graduate. Senator Hasegawa is a lifelong resident of the 11th Legislative District. He grew up on Beacon Hill in Seattle and graduated from Cleveland High School. He's a longtime labor and social justice activist. He has led many worker efforts, winning top wages and benefits for working families and retirees. And he collaborated with many social justice struggles to protect civil rights, democracy, the environment, and our constitutional rights. Since he began representing the 11th Legislative District in 2005, first in the House of Representatives and through 2012, and now in the Senate. Bob's priorities have centered on serving as a voice for working families, small businesses, and disenfranchised communities. I will read now the constitutional provision as it presently exists. Then our guest speakers will present statements for and against Gross Senate Joint Resolution 8212. Participants supporting both sides of the issue will join us from their homes. The information about the measure was prepared by the Office of the Washington State Attorney General, and it reads, the constitutional provision as it presently exists, the Washington Constitution generally prohibits investing public money in the stock of private companies. This means that state and local governments are limited to investing public funds in fixed income securities, such as government and corporate bonds and certificates of deposit. The Constitution currently exempts several funds from this restriction. This exemption applies to any public pension or retirement fund, the Industrial Insurance Trust Fund, and money held in trust for the benefit of people with developmental disabilities. The exemption allows state and local governments to invest money held in those funds as authorized by law, including by investing in stock as authorized by the legislature. In 2019, the legislature enacted a law providing for long-term care insurance. Under that law, employees will pay premiums for state-sponsored long-term care benefits through a payroll deduction beginning January 1, 2022. Those premiums will be deposited into a new long-term services and supports trust account. Under current law, money held in the trust account could not be invested in stocks. So at this time, Ms. McCall, you have 3 minutes to begin explanation in support of the joint resolution. You're muted.
You're on mute.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the league and to in Pullman. Pullman is a special place for me. My daughter went to WSU, and I've spent many a weekend there moving her in and moving her out, and actually come to visit her several times. So I love the city of Pullman, and really enjoyed this opportunity to really share with you about 8212. So in 2019, the state passed the Long-Term Care Trust Act to ensure that people have the ability to pay for long-term care as they age. We know for a fact that people do not realize the costs related to long-term care and have not adequately saved. We also know that we have a huge age wave coming, and a greater number of people will be over 65 in this state and requiring some type of long-term care assistance. But again, they have not saved. What we really wanted to do with the Long-Term Care Trust Act is make sure that people have a benefit that they can use to retire with purpose and dignity, to pay for a healthcare provider, to pay for a home modification, to pay a family member to also care for them so that they're not economically burdened. AARP, along with a coalition of organizations, worked on this bill along with 8212. 8212 had strong bipartisan support, both in the House with a 96-1 vote and in the Senate with a 45-3 vote. We know that this bill will have long-term impact, and we know that if it fails, it's going to impact, thousands, hundreds of thousands potentially of future generations of people as they age. Right now, we have 1.2 million seniors in this state. Again, with the age wave, that number will continue to grow. When we look at 8212, 8212 is about a very common sense solution to find a way to invest a portion in it. And 8212 is just merely giving the state investment board the ability to invest these funds into and have options related to how they invest the funds. They have done this, and the voters have voted on this in the past. And actually in 1968, voters authorized the investment of the public pension funds into equity investments with a 72% yes vote. In 1985, voters authorized the investment of the Workman Comp Fund, and that passed 71% yes. In 2000, voters authorized investments for funds for people with disabilities, and that passed with a 65%. What we're asking in 8212 is that we make sure that we give the State Investment Board the opportunity to invest those funds the same way they have other funds. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters because in the state of Washington, just about 2 weeks ago, the Washington State League of League of Women Voters voted to support 8212, along with a variety of other organizations, including our Chamber of Commerce, also SEIU. We also have the Washington Healthcare Association, the National MS Society. So a lot of organizations who recognize the need for this bill and for a responsible, common sense investment strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Senator Hasegawa will speak for up to 3 minutes against 8212.
Okay, I think it's important to understand that I don't oppose the establishment of the long-term care trust fund or the services that it will provide because I voted for the underlying bill. What I oppose is investing that trust fund money into the stock market. That's unnecessarily putting our trust fund at risk when we don't need to. Right now, our constitutional framers said, invest it in municipal bonds or things that reinvest into our local communities and help our local communities meet their obligations, which is what the current system does. Plus, there was a great distrust of stock markets and corporations anyway when they drafted the Constitution. This feels kind of like deja vu all over again because, yes, there are certain exemptions in the Constitution that were passed by the people to allow investment in those things, into the stock market, like the pensions, as Kathleen mentioned. But those happened before I got to the legislature. In 2012, they tried a very similar bill with a similar constitutional change and the underlying bill that as the legislature, as allowed by law, as it says. And that bill back then in 2012 also passed by the legislature by an enormous margin. I think it was, I have the numbers here, there was only 4 people in the House that voted against Senate Joint Resolution 8223 in 2012. 4 in the House and 4 in the Senate. I was one of the 4. We wrote the voters pamphlet statement against it, and the people turned it down at the ballot by 56% because they said, why should we be putting our money at risk? And that was to allow higher ed institutions to invest their resources in the stock market. And the people said, no, this is an identical situation. This bill passed with only 3 no votes in the Senate, of which I was one, and 1 no vote in the House. And here I am again arguing that our fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that that trust fund money is there and not put at risk, which is what investing in the stock market would do. If we invested in the stock market, what we are is betting against ourselves actually, because how does the stock market make a profit? It makes its profit by exploiting workers and driving up, oh, I only have 7 seconds left. Okay, thank you. I'm opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for putting that stopwatch up, by the way. That's very helpful.
That was helpful.
I'm sorry I forgot it for the first question. I won't forget it again.
It's okay. We're moving right along. Thank you for your comments. So we have a committee of League of Women Voters of our local chapter that has prepared questions that we would like each of our participants to respond to. And we would appreciate no longer than 2 minutes response from each of you. And This is an information session. So I expect that only one person will be speaking at a time. And Sue Hentz will be reading the questions.
Thank you, Bobby. And thank you both for participating this evening. Our first question, if Washington State Constitution currently exempts all pension and retirement funds, the Industrial Insurance Fund, and the trusts for people with disabilities from the restriction, why is it not okay to apply the same idea to this fund? What is the difference? Ms. McCall, would you begin?
Sure, there really is no difference. The goal is to provide people with a substantive long-term care benefit. If we do not approve, if we reject this 8212, we will be basically losing out on $5 billion over 20 years. We simply want to have the State Investment Board have the ability to invest a portion of this money. There will be an independent commission that will review the investment model and the proportions of investments. But we want to give the state the ability to invest this money so that we don't lose this $5 billion potentially over 20 years. We also know that this type of investment is going to benefit hundreds of thousands of people who are a lot are very low income and have not saved anything for retirement. We also know that if this is rejected and not approved, an AARP is urging an approve vote, is that the benefit will be reduced. It will not benefit people as much. The premium will go up and people will suffer. They will potentially not be eligible for this benefit. AARP has been focused in, and we took a very scholarly approach to this. We spent hours with our researchers within AARP. We worked with outside consultants, with an actuarial scientist, data science person that looked at all the data. And this was the best investment strategy that we identified for the state of Washington and for our seniors in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, your comments?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite accurate to say we will lose $5 billion over the next 20 years if we don't start investing in the stock market, because any financial advisor will tell you past performance is no guarantee of future performance, and especially with the way that our economy is looking less like a V with a recovery after it. They're saying it's going to look like a check mark with a long time to recover from this. So the State Investment Board, after the Great Recession, lost, I think it was about 33% of its value. So 33% of what was probably around $100 billion right now, when you're making percentages back off of that much lower, yeah, you might gain 30%, but it's off of a much lower value. So I think a guaranteed return, investing in municipal bonds, you're not going to lose any money. You're not putting any money at risk due to the cycles of the stock market, where it's fiduciary responsibility to make sure that that trust will be there in the future. Yes, maybe it might grow faster if we invested in the stock market, but maybe we'll lose too. I mean, that's always the possibility when you're playing off greater risk against a greater return. So the basic fiscal model to finance this much needed social support system, I think, is fiscally irresponsible. And you should look at the returns, the non-monetized returns of being able to support our local governments by buying their municipal bonds. Then our local governments have the resources to actually do the work that they need to do and help the people. And that's not a monetary price. I mean, you can monetize it, but it would be very difficult. But I'm sure there's models out there. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you. I will reserve the opportunity to change the order of responses. So our next question, the long-term return on investments in the stock of large and successful companies is much greater than the fixed income securities such as government and corporate bonds and securities of deposit. Why should or should not Washington State take advantages of those? And with this question, I will also say, I know in a couple of situations, our questions are going to be quite close. We decided that hearing them different ways might elicit other kinds of comments from our participants too. So forgive me if it sounds so much like the others, but Senator, your response.
Okay, well, when you say much greater return in the stock market, the State Investment Board targets about 6.5% to 7% annual rate of return. That's what it tries to average over the long term. Municipal bonds would be a few percentage points less, maybe 3.5. So is that a huge margin considering the risk of losing 33% during the Great Recession and how long it takes to recover from that huge loss versus a steady actual gain year after year after year? But let me give you an alternative. What if, and we were talking about this offline just before the meeting started, our proposal to entirely change the public financing paradigm, which is to create our own publicly owned state bank. There's one model in the country where a state owns its own bank and doesn't have to sell bonds to Wall Street to finance things. That's the Bank of North Dakota. Bank of North Dakota just reported their 16th consecutive year of record profits for the people of the state of North Dakota. That means 16% raising new revenue without raising taxes, and they returned an 18.6% rate of return. That's by reinvesting in the people of the state rather than in derivatives or whatever other profit-making schemes there are. So I think we have to really rethink our public financing strategy and think about building a publicly owned bank, which could actually change our entire public financing paradigm and the way we think about how we're going to finance these programs.
Thank you. Ms. McCall?
So we do not have a state bank in Washington State. We have to rely on the investment choices that we currently have. 8212 is about giving the state of Washington the ability to determine where those investments are made. And that is what we're trying to do with 8212. We want to give the highest yield possible. As Senator Hasagawa said, the difference between a municipal bond and a yield is 6% or 8%. That equates out to about a $5 billion difference for the state of Washington. I noticed the stop timer. I'm gonna end there, thank you.
Oh, that was 100% my fault. I didn't set the timer to the next question. You have more time.
Give that a minute.
Thank you. So again, this is about a benefit, and we want to give the state the ability to have the option to invest in stocks or high yield equities. It's an option. It is not a mandate. We want to give them the option to invest those. It will also be overseen, the trust will be overseen by an independent mission who will make decisions if they see fluctuations and changes in the market to shift some of those investments, to make sure that there is the highest level of return in those investments. We know that the stock market ebbs and flows. I look at my 401k and I'm just, I'm heartbroken, but the next day I'm elated. And it's like a roller coaster. But over the long term, even in Senator Hasagawa's description of a check mark, the stock market continues to grow. And we want to take advantage of that for the people of the state of Washington and our older adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. Can you explain the success or lack of success of the investments for the several funds that have been allowed to invest in stocks and other authorized investments? That is for funds exempt from the constitutional prohibition. Ms. McCall, would you go ahead?
Sure. So as we mentioned, there is the, in 1968, voters authorized the investment of the public pension fund into equity investments. That fund continues to do well. We have one of the best public pensions in the country. In 1985, we also invested the Workman Comp Fund. And in 2000, voters authorized the ABLE Fund, which is for people with disabilities. All of those funds are security for those populations and financial assets that they can rely on to fulfill their lives. I have data points about how those are invested and also the return on the investment and the percentage of investments. And yes, again, as things are ebbing and flowing, right now our economy is struggling. So a lot of those funds are also going to be potentially struggling. But I was just talking to a group of public employees and retirees the other day, and we were talking about 8212. And they were telling me and sharing stories of comparing their pensions with other states and how they feel very fortunate. So the State Investment Board, we have trust in their ability to make these decisions. And again, there's an independent commission that will make the determinations to make sure that these investments are wisely made and common sense decisions are being made on how to invest this money.
Thank you. Senator?
Yeah, so yeah, our state investment board is considered one of the best in the country, and rightfully so. And I have no, qualms with our state investment board. They're working under the constraints that they have, which is the stock market and how volatile it is. But they still, you can't dispute that they're targeting 6.5%, 7% annual rate of return versus what we could, and that is questionable depending on the economic cycle. But I think it's more than just a hard dollar thing. I think we have to adopt a philosophical basis for the decisions that we make and do the right thing. And when we're investing in Wall Street, we're condoning investment in fossil fuels and all these other things because we're trying to maximize profit. We've gone from maximizing social benefit to maximizing profit. And we've seen what happens when that happens. The social contract of good, providing for the common benefit, is out the window, and it's dog eat dog at that point. We see cities all around the country and states trying to divest from certain banks, for instance, for the way that they conduct their investment strategies. Our state investment board says it can't do that because they're required to maximize their profit by law. So I think that it's a matter of social conscience and philosophical principle as much as it is just a prudent fiduciary responsibility to guarantee that the trust will be there in the future.
Thank you. I think you both have talked about this before, but what is the average rate of return for Washington State exempt and non-exempt fund investments over the last 5 years, then maybe over the last 10 years? Senator?
Well, I'm not really sure what the non-exempt that, the state treasurer invests those things by just buying, municipal bonds or whatever. I don't know what non-exempt funds rate of return is, to tell you the truth. I haven't looked at that. It would be whatever the rate of return for a municipal bond or other government-backed securities would be. So I don't have that number, sorry.
Thank you. Ms. McCall?
The documents that I have seen, the rate of return is anywhere between 6.8% and 8.7%. So again, better than if you are investing it yourself. Again, right now, that's just an average based on the current economic situation, looking back over the last half of this year, which, obviously has not been great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last question. With the large additional deficits caused by the COVID virus relief spending, eventually there must be some paid off by increasing taxes or allowing the inflation rate to increase from its very low current rate. Because legislators generally are not willing to increase taxes, the inflation rate will most likely increase, and this causes the principal value of bonds to go down. How can the non-exempt fund investments avoid or compensate for this significant loss in value? We've heard that easily 50% loss if the interest rate doubles. Senator?
Well, that's working under the assumption that inflation is the other answer, which, you know, we can't control what the federal government or the Federal Reserve is going to do. But I don't know how to respond to that one. Comparing a rate of return to inflation, or, you know, my guess, tell you what, would you repeat the question and maybe I can formulate a better response, because
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think that's a faulty assumption to begin with, that inflation is the only other way to meet our need. I would say if we could create our own public bank, then public bank can borrow from the Federal Reserve at almost 0% rate of return, which is what banks can do. State governments, if we went to the Federal Reserve or we want to borrow money, we'd have to do it at market rate plus fees. So it would be a tool that would help us immediately address our COVID crisis issue, because we could just then, because we had a bank, go and borrow money at almost 0% and then reinvest it. Because what a bank can do is lend your core capital by up to 10 times. So if we capitalize the bank with, say, $1 billion, that creates up to $10 billion worth of lending capacity if it was a depository for our tax revenue as well. $10 billion would create tons of new construction jobs and school construction, all of this stuff. To me, that's a much wiser investment. I know that's off the topic, but and that we don't have a bank yet, but I think that if we push hard enough on the government, because I know the League of Women Voters at the state level just adopted a position of supporting this issue, right now is the time when it would really show its benefit, because during an economic crisis is when a publicly owned bank, as opposed to a commercial bank, would actually expand credit, not contract it.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. McCall?
That is a very thoughtful and thought-provoking question, and something that I think economists, would sit and, love to sit and debate and pull that apart. I think inflation is, it is up to the monetary policy of the federal government. And I know that right now we're in unprecedented territory and unprecedented times as an economy. And it will be, remain to see how this plays out. We do know that we will get through COVID. We will get through the economic impacts of COVID. We will come out of it as a better nation, operating differently. But I think that will also have residual impacts on the way that money is valued, and the economic impacts that play out. Again, inflation is not necessarily the only indicator of a healthy economy. Healthy economy is, can you support the people that live in this country, in this state, in our communities? And what we're talking about really today with 8212 is really a common sense solution for investing money for the long term to protect future generations of older adults as they age, and giving them the ability to age with purpose and dignity and have the money that's available. Again, this is a solution that I've been working on for more than 5 years, along with a team of data scientists, sociologists, geriatricians, insurance industry experts, economists, and this is our best direction, and we feel like it is a really good common sense solution, and we are the first in the nation to do this work. And again, I appreciate your support.
Thank you. And thank you very much for answering our questions this evening. Bobby?
Okay, thanks, Sue, for moderating that, and thank you Ms. McCall and Senator Hasagawa for your participation in this forum. You're certainly welcome to stay and listen to the rest, or maybe you have things to get to. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your having us.
Okay, the Pullman League voters has 2 members to read the support and opposition material as provided by the Secretary of State in the voters pamphlet. The measure summary is as follows. The legislature passed engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5395 concerning comprehensive sexual health education. This bill would require school districts to adopt or develop consistent with state standards, comprehensive, age-appropriate sexual health education as defined for all students and excuse students if their parents request. So would the readers, I believe Kat Odell is our first reader, and would you read the argument for the resolution?
Sure. Approve referendum 90 for safe and healthy kids. Young people in every community deserve age-appropriate information and resources to make good decisions about sex and relationships, to enable them to protect their health, keep themselves safe, and build their future. Right now, too many students are not receiving high-quality, medically accurate sexual health education, putting them in immediate risk of harm. Approving referendum 90 will uphold a new Washington law requiring all public schools to teach age-appropriate, inclusive, comprehensive sex education. This starts with the social and emotional learning for younger students and includes teaching older students about ways to prevent pregnancy and practice affirmative consent. It will keep kids healthy. Studies show young people who receive quality sex education are less likely to partake in risky sexual behaviors, experience unintended pregnancy, or get a sexually transmitted infection. Sex education also serves as prevention for sexual abuse and rape. Young people need information and resources about healthy relationships to understand how to protect personal boundaries, ask for consent, and learn how to say and receive a no. Kids experiencing abuse urgently need to know how to get help. Children who are being sexually abused often don't understand what is happening until someone provides them with the tools to communicate with trusted adults. This year, parents, educators, and medical professionals from across Washington worked together to pass a comprehensive sex education law. Let's protect that law and young people's futures by approving referendum 90.
Very good, thank you. Now we will hear from the reader with the argument against the referendum. Mary Collins. You need to unmute, Mary.
Sorry. Okay. Reject referendum 90. Overturn K through 12 comprehensive sex education mandate. The legislature passed a bill mandating a new comprehensive sexual education curriculum for all students, K through 12. Huge numbers of students are failing math, science, and English. Olympia should prioritize improving literacy and helping students graduate, not creating a new mandate. Reject referendum 90. Restore local control for parents and local school boards. The new comprehensive sexual education bill means unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats, not local communities, will develop statewide sex education standards for all students. It requires school districts to adopt a sex education curriculum that meets those standards. Parents and their local elected representatives will have little input in determining how they want their kids to be taught. Reject referendum 90. Stop the early sexualization of our kids. Kindergartners need to learn social skills, and elementary students should be focused on fundamental learning. Materials that currently meet state standards include graphic sexual subject matter. These are decisions that should be left to parents and local communities. Reject referendum 90, a costly mandate at a time when school budgets are being cut. State and local budgets are facing massive deficits, which threaten funding for basic programs. Schools cannot afford to add an expensive new requirement or design their own sex education curriculum that meets state standards. Trust parents and local communities to develop school curriculum collaboratively. Protect local control. Reject referendum 90.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Now, Sue, I see here that there's time for rebuttal against the referendum and then rebuttal for the referendum. Do you have questions about this, or do we go back and forth? Oh, I see. Okay, let's just go with this. So Kat as the reader against, or excuse me, Mary as the reader against 90. Do you want to carry on?
Sure, I'll read the published rebuttal, which says, referendum 90 is a blatant power grab by Olympia bureaucrats to take away parental control and impose a comprehensive sexual education curriculum starting in kindergarten. Parents and local schools are already doing an excellent job at this now. HHS.gov reports that for the last 25 years of available data, Washington's teenage birth rate dropped 69%. Aaron's Law, which was passed in 2018, addresses sexual abuse prevention and online safety. Vote reject to retain parental and local control.
Okay, and now do we have a reader for
490?
Yes.
Parents, teachers, and pediatricians know that in states with quality sex education, teens are talking about consent, waiting longer to have sex, avoiding getting pregnant, and keeping themselves safe. R90 gives parents the ability to opt children out if they're uncomfortable with content, and every district must collaborate with communities on curriculum selection. R90 requires age-appropriate education, meaning social and emotional learning for self-control and interpersonal skills in grades K through 3. Approved R90.
Okay, thank you, readers, Mary and Kat, for your help this evening. And information about the issue is available in the voters pamphlet that was mailed recently to the Washington residences and is also available online from the Secretary of State website. So there are a number of advisory votes on the ballot. Voters are asked if each measure should be retained or appealed. The vote is described as advisory. However, it will have no effect on the legislation as passed. So I'm going to read these advisory notes. Advisory vote 32 in gross substitute Senate Bill 5323. The legislature imposed, without a vote of the people, a retail sales tax on pass-through charges retail establishments collect for specified carry-out bags, costing $32 million in its first 10 years for government spending. Advisory vote 33. Substitute Senate Bill 5628. The legislature imposed, without a vote of the people, a tax on heavy equipment rentals to consumers by heavy equipment rental property dealers, costing $103 million in its first 10 years for government spending. Advisory vote 34. In gross substitute Senate Bill 6492. The legislature increased, without a vote of the people, the business and occupation state tax rate for certain businesses, while reducing certain surcharges, costing $843 million in its first 10 years for government spending. Advisory vote 35. engrossed Senate Bill 6690. The legislature increased, without a vote of the people, the business and occupation tax on manufacturers of commercial airplanes, including components or tooling, costing $1,024 million in its first 10 years for government spending. The League encourages every Washington voter to review the voter's guide. Let's see, I believe I have a copy of that, but it got carried away. So I was going to show you a copy of it, but I don't have it right in front of me. At any rate, please do review the voter's guide, and it is also online through the Secretary of State website. So tonight's program has been recorded and will be available at the Pullman League of Women Voters website, lwvpullman.org. And then I would like to also remind you, there will be a Zoom candidates forum with county commissioners, candidates on Thursday, October 15th from 7 to 8 via Zoom, and a candidates forum with candidates for District 9 representative and this is set for 4 to 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 17th, also via Zoom. And those links can be found on the League of Women Voters Pullman website. There is still time to register to vote. The deadline is October 26th. You can register online at www.votewa.gov. Ballots are being mailed out at this time. Online and mail registrations to vote must be received October 26th in order that a ballot can be mailed out and returned on Election Day. One can register to vote in person during business hours and can vote anytime before 8 p.m. on Election Day. Check your city clerk for locations to register in person and for official drop boxes. Ballots must be deposited in an official drop box by 8 p.m. on Election Day. And before that, you will want to, if you have decide to do mail-in, please be sure you get your ballots in early enough. So thank you for joining us this evening and taking time to become informed. The League of Women Voters and Pullman Chamber of Commerce appreciates your participation and for your interest in making democracy work. Thank you very much, and please remember to vote because it matters. Good night.